Welcome to the Nausea River podcast. I'm Theo Morgan, and what do you know? You ran into me at a show. The crowd's dispersed, but I'm still here, looking for familiar faces or new friends of any sort. It's probably happened quite a few times today when listening to this podcast, and it's likely how you heard about it. Where better to market myself? Between April 29th, 2024 and that date of this year, I went to roughly 65 concerts. From about 20 people at Ralph's Diner to see Burial Oath to a sold-out Palladium crowd for Opeth, and somehow those were within a week of each other. It's a life that comes naturally to me, as if I was birthed on the disgusting Palladium floors themselves. I don't expect anyone to mirror my lifestyle. Honestly, I'd recommend against it. This shit gets expensive, tiring, and all-consuming. It's the epitome of a hobby for someone single and childless, and the sort of obsessiveness that betrays a lot of my own personal demons. There's no one still alive or in contact with me who met me before that date in 2024, but somehow all of my new friends assume I was there at the shows beforehand, just infinitely more shy, and they got that one right. There's a short time where I was indeed at those shows. It was really fun meeting people who also saw Devin Townsend right before everything locked down for the pandemic. But then they think they've seen me everywhere, like I'm Jesus in a piece of toast. Random ass Boris, Elder, and Black Dahlia murder shows from 2022 and 2023. And I'm sorry, your metalhead princess was in another castle, at least in my third floor apartment, killing my liver and eating some tteokbokki. Would you believe I even gave up my tteokbokki habit for concerts? It's true. Maybe I should walk back on that one. After all that lost time, I rolled up to Brighton Music Hall on April 29th last year looking like I hadn't seen the sun in years, and by sun we obviously mean some bright stage lights. The crowd pushed against me during Cataclysm's set, and I realized where I was meant to belong. But if even I could miss out on years of concerts with a litany of excuses, then there are countless metalheads struggling with this too. I can't fix everyone's issues, but I figured I'd work through some of the logistics and mental hurdles of attending shows. It's meant to be practical, but it gets a little personal too. There's also stuff I have no authority to talk about, like what to do with kids, so I won't. Talk about it with a babysitter or your in-laws. I can't do anything about tours not stopping within 100 miles of you. I can't take down Live Nation with my bare hands, but believe me, it's tempting. I can't take you to Summer Gloom this year, but we can say hi in the dark. But I hope what I will say will help someone out. Maybe it'll even be the nagging voice in my head that I need in 2023. I don't have much money. There's a lot of discourse about concert prices these days, and if you're curious as to why, just download the Ticketmaster app and shake your head in disgust. It's been a massive issue for years, but the most talked about examples are ones that are foreign to me as a metalhead. Even when I take a break from being a metal podcast, my non-metal tastes are still pretty eclectic and obscure, and I'm talking about paying $50 to see Letters to Cleo or Jordy Griep. That's still some disgusting Ticketmaster fees, but I'm never encountering the $700 TD Garden floor tickets either. I didn't want to pay half that for Ghost, and I'm no snob, I fucking love Ghost. It's easy to scoff at all the mainstream masses while I never pay 3 figures for a single show. But I also make good money and tend not to worry about the price of an individual ticket either. But rest assured, I was living paycheck to paycheck until 2024, and I'm also a fan of a good deal. I owe those with tighter budgets to break down various ticket price points and strategies. And the sad truth is everything is cheaper at the box office, and less convenient, and you can't access pre-sales if that's indeed your thing. But as much as I could bitch about Ticketmaster and AXS, if a venue turns to them for online sales, they certainly have a brick-and-mortar box office, or several. Crossroads Presents lets you buy tickets to any of their venues at any of their box offices, which does play into my personal strategy. I don't live near Boston, but I make a list of shows I want tickets to that are at, well, usually just the Paradise or Brighton. But it works for other Crossroads venues, I swear. Imagine I have a lot of reasons to go to MGM or the Orpheum, and I just haul myself to the Paradise's box office if I'm in the city and it's a show night for them. I usually save $8 to $10 a ticket this way, and You heard of my shows I went to last year. That adds up. Though they don't print paper tickets anymore, which breaks my heart. This is not a definitive list, but besides Crossroads, the Middle East and the Palladium have their own box offices on site, independently run and servicing them alone. The Sinclair has the box office for all Bowery events. Broadly, that means anything at the Sinclair, the Royale, Roadrunner, or Suffolk Downs. Apparently they handle Fete and Providence as well, but I've only paid at the door for their lounge room shows. It was $15 for Reversed and Pathogenic. Now, that's a steal. Best of all, I got a paper ticket for Alcest at the Royale. Enjoy the souvenirs. Speaking of that, some venues are going to have cheaper tickets at the door than over the web too. It's a delicate game of sensing what will sell out versus what won't. Does the band have name recognition, even in the relative obscurity of metal? That's not even a good metric. Krallice wasn't in danger of selling out at all, but Fuming Mouth did. But Fuming Mouth are also hometown heroes and had high command on the bill, and Krallice are merely the granddaddies of every pretentious avant-garde NYC metal band. And I fucking love them for it. At the very least, you'll probably see a low ticket warning somewhere, and if I must eat a fee to guarantee my spot, so be it. Maybe you'll have to say it wasn't meant to be instead, but here's something I can say. The Middle East adds an extra $5 for day of tickets, but Feast or Ticket Web, the site they use for online sales, have a $7 service fee. Am I really pretending like the discourse about concert ticket prices is over $2 differences? If you're here as a metalhead, you're arguably in a better position than most music fans, maybe outside of DIY punk and hardcore. They get more free shows and weird shit like playing in parking lots, what can I say? But metalheads are lucky in other regards. A sort of genre with just enough universal appeal for every city in the US, Europe, and Latin America to have its own scene of some kind. And yet, still not enough appeal to get all but the biggest metal bands out of modest bars and clubs. If you care about metal even a little bit, you'll get loads of fulfillment from the $15 show at Ralph's Diner, even if you're going in blind. I'd even argue it's a better experience to see metal in dark and tight quarters like that. Better crowds, freedom of movement, and you can still get a nasty pit. I swear on my life that you can. How cheap does it get? I think $5 was the lowest I saw it, and it was for Tears from a Grieving Heart and Wandering Oak and part of a sliding scale entry fee. And I saw Fuming Mouth that night instead. I'm a terrible friend. I wish there was more to say about free metal shows. Someone's going to make the comment that I'm not looking in the right places and basements, but maybe this scene sadly has little to offer for the truly broke. But you know what I recommend? Start a metal podcast and angle for guest list privileges. Works every time. I can't imagine going to a show alone. This one always confused me. You actually expect your friends to like your music? Barring hurdles like relying on friends for transit, more on that later, going to a show alone was always the easier option to me anyways. Forget having my eclectic tastes. Going alone means only one ticket to buy and no one to coordinate a formal meetup with. I know I talk about my friends a lot, but meeting them is more of a passive thing. And before I had them, well, I just didn't want to let loneliness stop me. I figured most metalheads went to shows alone anyways, and while I can argue over how much most is, it's not entirely untrue. You see plenty of solitary guys on their phone or getting water between sets, easy prey for extroverts like me to bother. It's simply not a thing I felt self-conscious about. Be like me and arrive an hour or two early in queue and people watch, instead of arguing with a friend who thinks that'll be boring. Now, maybe it's just who I talk to, but when I hear someone worried about going to a show alone, it's often another woman. And in metal, I get that there aren't a lot of voices to quell your fears that won't come off as flippant or like mansplaining. So take it from your favorite female podcaster. You'll live. I'm not gifted with the best sense of danger, but it does mean that I never took fears about getting groped, drugged, or assaulted into consideration when I started going to shows. It's hard to draw the line between reasonable caution and fear-mongering made worse by social media and 24-hour news cycles. It's hard to say why I fear no man at a concert, but still won't accept any open drinks from anyone either. It's also not productive to pretend that metal is only full of wholesome teddy bear-esque guys who won't lay a hand on a woman, but it's not the same environment as a nightclub either. The men cruising for thrills, dates, and pussy have better hunting grounds than a metal show. Your average guy in the crowd wants to listen to music and not be talked to by strangers. Your average metalhead creep isn't a smooth-talking charlatan, but an off-putting loser. The kind of person who gets into metal, of course. I don't even know if that is what women are talking about when they won't go to a show alone. Maybe it's only fearing a loneliness we're not used to. You rarely hear about women going to bars or nightclubs alone. Probably for good reasons. Hell, I'm the only woman I know who regularly eats alone in restaurants. I've spent most of my life as a lonely person, so there was no mirror held up to me with a shocking reflection. No horror when I got a taste of typical male loneliness, because in a lot of ways, I'm like one of the boys. Making friends within the Boston metal scene solved both issues at once. I still never buy 2 tickets, but there's always a familiar face in the crowd, sometimes a lot of them. Rare is the show where I shut up for 4 hours and only listen to live music. There is a friend in the crowd, or there will be by the end of the night. I am a very chatty person. Whether a man or a woman or a secret third thing, I made the connection so someone will always have my back. If you want an extra layer of reassurance, still go to the damn concert, but get to know who is working at the venue too. Security, bartenders to buy non-alcoholic Red Bulls from, the nice lady in coat check. I don't even mean being their friend, even if that's more possible than you think, but just remembering what they look like and where to find them. I can't solve the issue of pickpockets, obnoxious drunks, and mosh pit kids who think it's a great way to touch boobies for the first time. But the security at the House of Blues or whatever can beat their ass into a pulp without consequences. Or so I've been told. And if you think about it that way, you're actually never alone. For any reason, I physically cannot stand for the length of your average concert. This is something that's hard to glean from my tales of being on my feet all weekend and every weekend, but me being able to do this is a miracle unto itself. And by miracle, I do mean a lot of hard work and adaptation on my behalf after a debilitating pedestrian accident. I didn't attend any concerts during the worst of it, but it wasn't due to a lack of options. Is it my biggest regret? Of course. Eventually I recovered, or at least I recovered the most important stuff, but right now it doesn't matter if you can't. For all their flaws, the corporate-owned venues tend to be extremely accessible for the disabled, as they can smell the lawsuits from a mile away. The only catch is that you have to contact them first. Perhaps to avoid accusations of extortion or unfairness, a lot of ADA seating is tied to a general admission or floor ticket. This is somewhat important for the Palladium, as they have an ADA section on the lower level through an alternate entrance, but also mezzanine seating that costs extra. And as far as I know, that level has no elevator access. That being said, mezzanine is a popular choice for friends of mine who aren't necessarily disabled, but are older. The sort of condition that still lets you use the stairs. From what I can gather, MGM Fenway has you purchase a floor ticket for ADA access as well, but has elevator access to most or all of the upper levels. Don't ask, haven't been there yet. Even a small venue like Brighton Music Hall has a small section cordoned off for those who request ADA seating. You're seamlessly escorted off by security at the door, and honestly, no one really knows you do it unless they see you seated. It's easy to work with these places when it comes to getting accommodations, at least from my experience. It does work on the honor system, at least not requiring a doctor's note or medical records. Is someone going to listen to this and lie about their peripheral neuropathy or bad knees to get special treatment? I don't know. Please don't. Keep the system working for those who truly need it, so they can seamlessly get the accommodations they need with a modicum of dignity. But other venues are less clear about this. The Middle East confuses me. I've only once seen them get a chair for someone. It was for a friend who just had surgery but wasn't going to miss seeing Elder. But not all hope is lost, and it's a quirky set of venues. Sonia is one of the perfect venues for accessibility, and completely by accident. It's all flat, not even a step off the curb to get inside, and the best part of it is the raised platform where the soundboard is. There's a section of seating there, just simple bench seating, but because it's raised, you get a spectacular view and the best sound in the room. Since it's not reserved, I've sat there just to get away from the noise and ruckus, but it also means get there early enough to claim your spot if you in fact need it. Upstairs is right off one of their restaurant spaces. This is just where I assume they might take pity on you and move a chair in towards the back or side. And downstairs is down some stairs. There's no elevator access from what I can tell, and even the Middle East's website can't include on their list of accessible venues. But here's what confuses me, and a tangent. The band Possessed has played at the Middle East downstairs, and for those not in the know, Possessed's frontman is Jeff Becerra, who is a paraplegic wheelchair user. So, how did he get down there? My guess is a piggyback ride. What other venues might be inaccessible? I think the only one that stands out as problematic is Ralph's Diner in Worcester. The main room is up a flight of stairs, and I don't know if there's a secret elevator in the building. And if that's true, it sucks that fans might not be able to access such a legendary venue in our state. The others I've personally been to are flat, first-floor affairs, though I never take the one step into the door into account. Consider these a probably. O'Brien's, Deep Cuts, Kodo Salem, and Kodo Lowell is a multi-floor space, but I've never been inside, sorry. I can't account for the limits of every wheelchair and mobility device either. Crutches will be easier to maneuver than a power chair. Still, everyone wants your business and patronage. Why not make them rise to the challenge? I will say that the more bar-like a venue is, the better it might be if your only issue is standing. The humble bar stool has saved me at Ralph's when I felt sick or dehydrated. It saved me at O'Brien's when my pelvic pain comes back. It was a really bad accident, alright? So we don't have to glaze the big venues over accessibility, even if they might have a bigger incentive to provide it. I can't provide all the answers here, but what I can provide is that famous old picture of a guy in a wheelchair crowd surfing at a bolt thrower show. Let's use it for the thumbnail. I found a lot of other photos of such a stunt while trying to find that one in particular. There are places that do not cater to our disabled brethren enough, but hey, they had to get in somehow. I don't do well in crowds, and I think this would be overstimulating. I understand if you don't want to listen to me and my addiction to the sensory overload of crowds, loud music, uncomfortable clubwear, and spicy food. I'm a depraved dopamine seeker, and while it's easy to think that metal is full of my kin and mosh pit warriors too, let's be real, plenty of you are nervous shut-ins, or at least have been at one point. I'm going to start with actual sensory processing issues and work down to just being nervous. There is no requirement to see live music as a metalhead for what it's worth. If the crowds and noise are a circle you truly can't square even if you listen to some harsh music in private, then relax. Live vicariously through me. You'll always be my brother in metal. But if you want to try it out anyways, you deserve to be in the crowd with reasonable measures to put your mind at ease. Unfortunately, a lot of venues don't explicitly make themselves sensory-friendly, but the Songus Arena in Lowell has a partnership with Culture City to provide sensory-friendly kits at events. And Nightwish performed there once, so technically we can call it a metal venue, right? The kits include noise-canceling headphones, fidget toys, and since the arena is a seated venue, a weighted lap pad. And at the expense of having to provide your own tools, none of these are banned items at other venues either. I mean, responsible parents use noise-canceling headphones so they bring young children to shows. They're really good tools for ear protection, and maybe it's just me, but I don't care if you're using a fidget spinner next to me or bring a reasonable-sized plushie. I'm being slammed into by overweight men. There are real issues going on. Arguably, I'm just as annoying because I have a bit of an addiction to gum and throat lozenges. I will smack you if we call it fidgeting or a stim, but I understand there's no real difference. And, I don't know, go towards the back or the mezzanine if there is one. Fewer people touching or bothering you. I don't have a lived experience with a sensory processing disorder. I'm a different breed of prissy princess. But screw that, you're just shy and uncomfortable in crowds, and that's something I can speak authoritatively on. And you're probably tired of people telling you to get over yourself, even though rationally you know you're never on the forefront of anyone's mind at a metal concert. Like, there's a whole band on stage. To me, metal shows have the kind of crowd that's easy to ignore. It is packed and sweaty and uncomfortable, but there's something about the collection of mostly quiet nerds that's easy to tune out, especially with earplugs. And you certainly brought those, right? There's no obligation to talk to anyone, no obligation to dance or be the center of attention. If anything, you'd probably be resented a little for trying to be the main character. It doesn't help perceptions that these shows often take place in self-described bars and nightclubs. Take it from a former drunk. Going to a bar without paying a cover charge for a metal band might as well be going to a whole different spot entirely. The big difference, everyone is talking at full volume when it's not a concert night. People talk at concerts, but it's a lot less restrained without the promise of music. And I find the concert crowd less suffocating for it. There's a tree at the end, even if I feel a little claustrophobic. Worst case scenario, start with the most no-name bar show imaginable. Who the fuck is North Star the Wanderer anyways? Striga? Well, just say that Theo from Nausea River sent you. Not like anyone but the band will hear you. We're more talking about a well-populated college class's worth of people than any kind of crowd. At some point, it's probably healthy to face the anxiety, even if it won't make you get to MGM floor tickets or anything. Not like I want to either. Well, I'm different. I don't know if other metalheads will accept me. For this section, I am going to have to preface this by saying I am only talking about Boston. If your metal scene is full of chuds and transphobes and Nazis, then that's awful, and it sucks that there are subtypes of the broader metal scene that tolerate that. Granted, its adherents probably revel in being underground and unlikable, so I can't say that I know any Boston area NSBM bands. But metal has a reputation for being a genre for white guys only, even when they're otherwise acting benign and welcoming. After my concert hiatus, I noticed a bit of a demographic shift that let everyone else in, but definitely concentrated among younger people. Metal has an image problem. But what's the reality? What happens when you walk into a show? I don't want to speak over minorities, and I know, I'm a woman. Despite all the jokes about how rare female metalheads are, the experience of being one is a strange, patronizing, and soft kind of sexism instead of bigotry. The sort of thing where you don't feel unwelcome, you feel the opposite, but it's clear you're fetishized and put on a pedestal. Surely it will be worth an episode one day. But I want to give the Boston metal scene credit for being very accepting. It's a very left-leaning scene by metal standards, and even the less politically inclined have a very strong live and let live approach to things. I've never watched some guy let his guard down around me because I'm white or I'm cis and spew hate for others. And on the other hand, I haven't had a show turn into a Maoist struggle session. I know plenty of active socialists and communists that I've met at metal shows, and at most, I got handed a promotional sticker for the Revolutionary Communists of America while waiting in queue. Then we talked about music for the rest of the night. What a concept. I'm not saying hate and discrimination never happens here, but I am saying that the people who will have your back outnumber the bigots. I am saying that there are well-kept safe spaces in the Boston metal scene. I will actually harken back to my first episode ever and drop Summer Gloom's name, now that I know its organizers and participants better. Summer Gloom is a very progressive space, very rooted in the arts, and shall I say, very Somerville. But you don't want my reassurance. You want to know if you'll be the only person like you at a show. Are you the only black guy? Are you the only trans woman? Are you the only person who's visibly disabled? Maybe, maybe not. Well, you're probably not the only trans woman. I think they're the most represented LGBT group in metal in general, not just in Boston. My only theory is that there are a lot of quote-unquote guys who don't fit in with other men in broader society and seek out metal before they find the real answer and come out as trans women. They get happiness and fulfillment. I get more women in the metal scene. It's great. Though the reverse doesn't really happen in the same way, and because of that I don't know tons of trans men who are metalheads. Not to preach to the choir or anything, but the rise of hate towards trans people and the legislative attacks towards them is despicable. I completely understand being scared and uncertain right now. I hope for those who are scared that Boston metal can be the one refuge from that. It sucks standing out in a crowd for whatever reason. If you're listening and not practicing being kind and not othering those who are different from you or who you don't understand, work on that. This isn't about politics or the culture war or the woke mind virus. I simply believe that the metal scene is better when everyone can participate as an equal. Worst comes to worst, they'll have to go through me first. I'm not strong, but it's the thought that counts. Yeah, but I can't drive. Bitch, neither can I. Now, the lead I shouldn't bury is that I have friends and family who will help me out with transport, namely getting to and from the commuter rail station. But otherwise, I'm an avid public transit user, definitely of the commuter rail. It's a shame that service doesn't go west of Worcester and Fitchburg, but thankfully I still live close. The commuter rail solves every show in Boston and several spokes on the wheel, so to speak. It's a pain in the ass to take the train to Boston and have to take another one to Worcester or Providence or Plymouth or Lowell. And sometimes I have to stay in an Airbnb because the trains don't run 24/7 and I don't want to get stranded. So there's not much money saved not having a car or insurance after all. Anyways, I've otherwise had no issue getting to venues from the commuter rail stop. The one exception is Widowmaker in Braintree. Braintree is the end of the T's Red Line, and it's nowhere near Widowmaker. I love to walk, but the journey is across over 3 miles of ugly stroads, and that was a test. And it included a stretch of highway with no sidewalk at all. There is a bus route that gets you pretty close, especially if you stop at Quincy Adams instead. Anyways, my brother makes fun of me for seeming to be afraid of the bus. He's right to do so. But I did get to Brighton Music Hall from Harvard Square once, and it wasn't bad at all. I'll make sure to do that when I see Squid later this month. Deep Cuts was a similar issue. Take the damn bus, but I love walking, and my hubris rarely wanes. At least when I did that, I told Hales from Tears from a Grieving Heart that her sleep shirt and Moxie baseball cap were a great combo, and the rest is history. It was worth it. Inside Boston proper, in Cambridge, and Somerville, most venues are very close to a train stop, but sometimes not the most logical one. And because I can walk, no, I'm not going to Magoon Square for the Armory. Redline to Davis. Roadrunner is probably the trickiest one because its closest stop is Boston Landing, a commuter rail stop for the Framingham line. It's otherwise pretty far off any Green Line branch. Granted, we're talking about an extra 20-minute walk, but that's not always what I want either. Most convenient, I'm always coming in on the Fitchburg line, which terminates at North Station, so the clear answer is Big Night Live. I feel like they'd book a show I like. But the real answer is, in fact, the Middle East. Whether you take the T for 2 stops from Porter to get to Central Square and basically at Zuzu's door, or if you take a breezy stroll through Cambridge. I do the walk for the upstairs shows since there's almost never a need to get there particularly early. This point might be tough because it ties in with the previous item. The best way to get around not having a car is having friends. And it's having the sort of presence at a concert that people can't live without and will sacrifice their precious gasoline for. Yeah, I'm saying that unless you have good proximity to public transit, you either need a car or insane Riz. And you'll have to make sacrifices. People will get sick or have family emergencies or not feel 100% even when you are. It's a lot of hard work to lead the life I do, and while I'm glad to be aspirational or whatever, I don't think owning a car would make most people able to do it. There are still shows I give up on trying to make work, even if it's bad for my brand. Sorry to Paradise Lost and Rivers of Nile and somehow several Worshipper shows. But that's just part of being an adult. More than driving is, I swear. And that's it. 6 tips peppered with my life experience and sage advice. There's going to be a 7th titled My Ex Will Be There, but, it got thorny. Too clogged with a thick, oily runoff from a pretty regrettable start to my year. But at the end of the day, it's a natural consequence of dating other metalheads. I'll take some awkward shows or strategic ticket acquisition or avoiding certain local bands over marrying a normie and hoping he's not completely repulsive. Don't look at the additional runtime. Please don't. Shit. Fuckers. It might be 2025, but I'm still worried about COVID. So the simple answer is this. No venue in Massachusetts that I'm aware of bans masks. At most, you might have to lower it for an ID check. And the live and let live attitudes of metalheads that I've encountered will extend to you. No matter the show, no matter the genre, no matter the type of crowd, there are at least a few people wearing masks. And it's 2025. If you're still wearing a mask in public, you've upgraded to a sterile-looking KN95 or N95, and so is everyone else still wearing one regularly. It might not be stylish, but I bring that up to say no one's going to look at you funny either. No one's going to harass you for wearing a mask. I certainly won't. I think it's pretty important for me to bring up that I'm against the mask bans that certain states and cities are implementing, and I hope Boston doesn't follow suit. Barring situations like ID checks and banks, everyone deserves the right to self-expression, including wearing a mask. It isn't going to stop crime, it isn't going to make protests more palatable to their targets, and I really am of the idea that's just a backlash to the trauma of COVID restrictions and mixed messaging. And I don't think it should be guiding policy, but I understand it more than most. Yeah, this one's gonna get personal and ugly. Most days I dance around why I took such a long break from shows, from March 1st, 2020 to April 29th, 2024. The answer lies in the dates after all, but the average person will understand being broke or injured a lot more than a self-imposed 4-year lockdown. So I say what gets me out of the conversation quickly. This is not a section for those who otherwise live full lives and touch grass, just with a mask on. If that's you, then you probably already go to concerts if you want to. You're probably getting more action than me and your queer polycule, and everything I complain about in terms of COVID-induced loneliness and isolation is simply a skill issue. And fair, I think some of us that I really hated wearing a mask, but I did anyways. There has been a lot of revisionist history around the nature of COVID lockdowns recently, mostly insisting that they were very short and people could get their lives back on track by June 2020. Meanwhile, I'm reading this what fucking planet did you drop from? Maybe on the most technical, official level, but you can't forget that there were more influences than just official mandates. There are a lot less official but very loud voices telling us how to live our lives. And if you didn't want to come off as a callous plague rat, you didn't give a shit that you could technically dine indoors. I lived with my parents during 2020 and much of 2021, two boomers who were very cautious for a long time around COVID. Their house, their rules. I didn't even walk outdoors without a mask on until May 2021, when I simply couldn't stand another summer of that. There was already enough arguing about me working at my in-person job. I couldn't play my hand anymore. But they had just turned 60, and a disease that was disproportionately killing older people was understandably frightening. And as I've made it clear on the podcast, I'm very close with my parents, even after I moved out. I still live close by. I see them all the time. We're inseparable parts of each other's lives. They didn't want to catch COVID. They didn't want to give it to family members like my grandpa. And while they were in their own doom loop fueled by the internet and CNN, there were also a lot of separate online voices telling me that I would be sentencing them to a slow death if I gave it to them. Forget concerts. I didn't dine indoors until 2022, and I kept it a secret from my parents at first. Even if I did break my own protocol, it was filled with the dread that I was going to catch something, so I spaced it out. Rarely saw friends indoors and took a COVID test before each one. Meeting new people was essentially off the table. There wasn't really anyone to tell me to reconsider my life either. The best case scenario, COVID was a little scary to everyone, even if they resumed living on a normal timeline. They didn't want to tell someone who was more scared than them that it was all fine, especially when infection and death rates were at their highest, and it was probably smart to be scared. And the other ones are the people who actually pissed me off. Broad masses of liberal and left-wing people, including friends of mine, who would endlessly harp on about the need to wear a mask and vaguely do more about COVID right through 2022 and 2023. Yet it was clear they were advocating for a life they never lived. They, in fact, were the sorts of people who still had indoor family gatherings in 2020 and 2021. The people who ate in restaurants and went on bar dates and partied, and yeah, even went to indoor concerts. Not a shred of self-awareness. I was probably the only person taking their online scolding so literally anyways, so they'll never have to face their hypocrisy because then everyone in their circle would. One of the more annoying friends in that regard flew without a mask next to me while I was struggling in a hospital-issued N95. It's the little things like that. Clawing my way back to my old life was long and arduous, with indoor concerts being the final step back to my normal life. And like some people, I didn't enjoy isolating myself. I don't think my parents did either, but they feel differently about it in hindsight. Because wasting your early 60s doesn't hit as hard as wasting the final years of your 20s. I resented every moment of it in real time, honestly. I'm a difficult mixture of shy and awkward without being that good at being a complete homebody. There was no introvert's paradise for me, just enough stuff to make it vaguely tolerable. I've never been a cottagecore girly, and my sourdough starter got moldy. I tried my best to entertain myself, but it was all in hopes that if I did the right things, I'd be rewarded with concerts and bar dates for the rest of my 20s, which didn't happen. I was scared, not of the virus, but of losing friends who at least made a big deal of saying how much they cared. How much we needed to sacrifice for those in vulnerable health while they probably attended at least one super spreader event and didn't even try to hide it. I didn't have as many friends back then either. Losing even one would be a devastating loss. Maybe it's why I only say this now, at the end of a podcast episode while my circle has grown tremendously. Either way, I'm back, and you could be too. Though I think the question on a lot of people's minds is, well, who's still afraid of COVID in 2025? Well, I commend you for being a lot less online than I am, but it's the passage of time that makes this difficult. I don't think the resentful, bitter, unwilling adherent who's like me really exists anymore, if they ever existed in any large capacity anyways. At most, it's maybe relegated to the children and dependents of the COVID cautious, but for the rest, it's not just a matter of someone telling them that it's okay to live life again, even if it makes some people mad. You're a true believer, waiting out the impending doom you've been convinced of. And I gotta ask, why listen to my podcast anyways? I'm just a plague rat gloating about the things I do that you no longer. It's like me when I watch thin, beautiful food and dining influencers sip on real cocktails. That is to say, I still do it. This can easily come off as insensitive to those in ill health who can't simply mind over matter their way out of being concerned about COVID and disease. They exist. But I can't keep pretending that this is a huge cohort of the COVID-cautious community, or even those who want to be protected by prolonged preventative measures. It's easy to fight for the sick and disabled in your head, especially if you are rather isolated and extremely online. Or you could be like me, a normal office worker slowly realizing that Debbie from accounting is on immunosuppressants and Pam from HR is a cancer survivor, and they got their vaccines and immediately went out to restaurants and to Disney World while you're eating Christmas dinner in an open garage bay. Hypothetical examples and fake names, to some extent, but I really threw away years of my life for the vulnerable who do not live by nor expect those standards. Do I even like those people that much? And I was still made to feel like I wasn't doing enough. Meanwhile, my grandpa, who is currently 90, was pretty annoyed by my parents and I wearing a mask in his house up through 2022. I didn't like visiting him for a while there, and you heard his age. I don't get infinite chances at that. Eventually, I caught COVID in early 2023, and while it sucked, it wasn't the sickest I had felt either. Norovirus and influenza beat it handily. I didn't give it to anyone at work, I fully recovered, and probably haven't caught it since. And despite a lot of the doom and gloom you see peddled online by certain people, that is the story almost everyone will give these days. I mentioned a feedback loop of online discourse, but even after escaping its influence, it's hard not to peek inside. A death spiral of blowing studies out of proportion till it's a given in that circle that COVID will one-shot anyone vaguely described as disabled, and the healthy survivors essentially have dementia and AIDS all in one. Even after I thought I was over their fear-mongering, I got very insecure about every time I misspoke or had a brain fart after I caught COVID. It made me ignore that I was deep-frying my brain with alcohol instead. It's not like anti-vaxxers convinced I'll die of blood clots and heart failure are any better, but at least they'd have probably told me to live a little and see Health and Perturbator live in 2022. Also, Godspeed You Black Emperor played on my birthday that year. What the hell? Looking back at concert archives hurts, okay? There are downstream effects from getting sick, and not just from COVID. Post-viral syndrome isn't something new after all. Viral infections are one of the leading causes of later onset type 1 diabetes. And when push comes to shove, I'll be sympathetic to the plight of those with long COVID. Instead of pointing out that a lot of people are pushed to pathologize every mild discomfort they feel as a direct result of having COVID and keep themselves deconditioned and lonely, they see long COVID strike less at random and only in those already anxious and in a doom loop about catching this virus, or someone confused being sore from coughing with impending heart failure again. Okay, try not to bring it up. We all struggle in different ways. I just didn't believe the doom after a while, at least not for myself. I still kept myself isolated for the sake of social acceptance and clout and my parents and a vague sense of empathy. But if it was only about me, I was being tormented by isolation, and there wasn't a personal consequence that would have stopped me. At that point, even my death would have been a fair trade-off, but I was raised to have both a keen sense of guilt and a narcissist's control over how others perceive me. I got out, but by that time I was a shell of myself too, and that's why I'm a pretty immature 31-year-old. You're probably even more hollowed out than me if you're still in this spot and still listening with good intentions. So what did I do in the end? I needed something to look forward to, and when you put yourself in such a hole, you can't see much. What probably saved me wasn't a concert, but my brother's wedding in September 2023. I think this collectively got both my parents and I to take a hard look at our lives. He's the only other child they have, and let's be real, they weren't holding their breath for me to find someone in a timely fashion. So I knew I had to eventually share a room with 150 or 200 other people breathing on me. I didn't want to spend all day in a mask or get photographed in one. Again, I hated wearing a mask. It was a compromise so I could feel secure taking public transit or running errands, not something I'd wear all day. It's tight and sweaty, and I'd be smelling my breath for hours. I'd see flyers for masks required of events of various kinds, and I'd not go. That sounds awful, and even if I tolerated it, there was this unspoken expectation that you couldn't resume the life you wanted to live anyways. You wore a mask to occasionally leave your house and signal how much you care about not spreading disease while judging the masses who just wanted to watch a movie or have a birthday party. The mask itself sucked all the fun out of life, even if it was just an accessory to it. It being a requirement of the in-group meant I didn't do anything because, fuck it, I don't have to wear anything special to drink and rewatch Hellraiser in my house. For others, it just meant you weren't going to tweet about hanging out in your friend's apartment later. Again, this may have just been a me thing, as I learned a lot of pandemic restrictions were. It's not easy coming back into the real world. The first time I ate at an indoors restaurant was so troubling that I stepped out and threw up in the parking lot. I had to have my brother give me a pep talk before we did the indoor activities for his bachelor party, going headfirst into bar hopping and clubbing. Otherwise, that weekend just made me so nervous that my throat actually got sore, not from illness, but from almost crying, and probably from drinking a lot. That was months after catching and recovering from COVID for the first time, by the way. I think at that point I just didn't want to miss too much work since my manager was more strict than others about needing a negative test before I could come back. It took many repeated, low-stakes outings into the laundromat, the grocery store, bakeries and cafes where I didn't have to eat and drink indoors. It took seeing friends more. It took even, not wearing a mask inside my cubicle at work. By the time his wedding came around, I felt pretty good about the day-to-day activities. Alright, I had to put a mask on while traversing the Natick Mall to get to level 99, but I took it off in there. And yes, we did all the games and puzzles at level 99 the night before his wedding. It was a lot of fun. I don't know what made concerts so much more difficult to overcome. I had gone to a few outdoor ones that year, just Boston Calling and Bruce Springsteen at Gillette, and only with my dad. Was it just a matter of outdoor crowd versus indoor crowd, or was it knowing that it was the same risk he was taking? I think the latter. He got me tickets to dry cleaning at the Paradise as a birthday gift in 2024, one for me and one for him. That was my sign that I could, perhaps, see Septic Flesh live too. And he wasn't against it. If you're still worried about COVID, are you mirroring others around you or truly making your own decisions? It's up to you to answer, but I don't think the numbers are there for people to mirror. Mine is a special case because I love my parents and I'm closer with them than most. My brother had an actual Christmas party with friends in 2021, and it made me sad, but he goes weeks or months without seeing my parents anyways. But at this point, you're probably a lone wolf. I don't know what's made you reconsider your stance. Can we assume it's a show, your favorite band, or some crazy lineup you can't miss? That's what Septic Flesh was for me, and still is. I mean, I had to prove it to myself by going to 65 shows and not getting sick. And this wasn't all in the healthy days of summer. Kids had gone back to school, holiday and winter disease surges went on, and this was a year without even a cold. Not my first year without a cold. I can't say that masks and quarantining are completely useless, but one where I was surprised. The risk to you isn't what doom posters on Twitter and Blue Sky will tell you. It exists, but we're becoming such a risk-averse society that we're forgetting about fun and opportunity and letting fate happen. You might just have to take the leap, and it's going to be the most difficult thing you've done in 5 years. You will cry and throw up and realize you didn't get sick. The vomiting is incidental. No one coughed on you. And even if you catch COVID, it was going to happen eventually. Sorry to break it to you. I'd rather it be while having one of the best nights of my life instead of at Starbucks because $6 lattes is what my enrichment got boiled down to. Obviously, there's more to life than concerts and hedonism, but you have to consider what you're fighting for. What good is health if there's nothing to enjoy? I'm not a believer in an afterlife or reincarnation, so this is your one shot at life. Your one shot at this miraculous existence that you continue to live in. Very few people are COVID cautious these days, but if you're one of the few, deep down you must certainly feel like you're missing out, watching friends get married and travel to Peru. Is life meant for rotting in your house and waiting for doom and permanent disability to rain down upon those who want to see Lorna Shore at MGM? What are you even planning to do after that? Maybe this one will snap metalheads out of it. You sound like a Christian waiting for the rapture, predicating life on an apocalypse that won't come to you in the form you hope it does. Maybe it's time to live in the moment instead. One thing that helps me is a good dose of magical thinking. I have a few post-show rituals, sad to say. I take vitamin C gummies and gargle with peroxide. Does it really help for a virus you breathe in? I have some doubts. But peroxide is safe to use as a gargle and mouthwash, and it does clear my throat of phlegm really well, and I love tangible effects. I try to keep a healthy lifestyle too. I'm not exactly fit, but I am active. I can't drive, so I walk everywhere. I eat a plant-heavy diet, my vitamin levels are shockingly very normal, and hey, did you know I don't drink anymore? It's not the cure for deep-seated syndromes and conditions, but it's worth being in the best position to fight off an illness you can be without going crazy. Fear and physical deconditioning wreck you faster and more definitively than COVID will. So, what band must you see before you die? I don't care what the answer is. You can be a diehard Falling in Reverse fan, waiting for Ronnie Radke to send you hate mail or whatever you guys do. Make it something far in advance so you have ample time to see how long you can spend unmasked in a Hannaford before freaking out. And every time you try, it gets a little longer. Thanks for listening to me about my personal life. Hopefully this is the most vulnerable I get. But rest assured, I don't like to talk while bands are playing. I certainly got it off my chest. I'm Theo Morgan, and have a good night.